Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to another Red Dragon in Allies unboxing. This is for Ozrik, the Adept. He's our human elementalist. So this is one of the single pack you can pick up, add on to any of the other sets. This guy has a lot of very interesting things in his deck. Between his gimmick or mechanic. As well as just a couple other little things about how his deck is built. But we'll get into that while we go through it. Alright, so what do we have in here? First of all, we have his instruction manual, which will explain how his deck works. And I'll just go over it as I go through the cards. But he uses various elemental icons to play special abilities. So he doesn't get a second deck to do that. He just gets his regular stuff. Then, of course, you have your gold, fortitude, and alcohol content tokens. And then we have our little board, which is our deck, discard, and drink me piles, our fortitude and alcohol content, plus our turn order. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know by now that all the sets before set number 5, the character trove, have these little boards like this, or if the bigger set, they have a little bit bigger boards. Everything after set 5 has some fancier ones that look like this. So all the previous characters are available in set number 5. So if you want this extra, personalized one, you can pick up set 5. For other characters, you'll have on the border, if they have special decks or if they have special rules. He doesn't have any of those. So it just is more or less just one with his picture on it. So again, it's not necessary to play with him. It just kind of gives you a little extra, feel for the character. The other thing you will also get from set number 5 that goes with the character is the deck divider. So this just helps sort out the deck. What's also fun about these is on the back it explains how their deck works. So now we'll kind of go over this. It says, many of his cards have symbols in the upper left corner, either E for Earth, F for Fire, or W for Water. Some of his cards allow you to discard one or more elemental cards from your hand for a more powerful effect. This is indicated by the symbols in that box. Each element ability may only be activated once at most, so even if you have 3 water cards, you can't play the same ability 3 times. If an element ability includes multiple elements, you must pay for all the elements listed. There is a wild card which may be paid for any element. It says when you play a card with an elemental ability, you must declare which elements abilities you are activating and discard the appropriate cards before your opponent responds. So basically, you're going to play the card, and then you're like, I'm going to discard these cards to give this additional effect or effects. And then now your opponents can react to it. So if they negate it or ignore it, you've lost your discarded cards. So it's kind of a neat way because his deck is going to cycle through his cards a lot quicker because you're going to keep discarding and having to redraw a lot more cards that way. But you have a lot more optional effects. So a couple other things that are very different about his deck is the back of his cards. So he's the only character I can think of outside of villains. The villains all have their special backs, which are kind of black with a little picture that indicates what they are. All the other characters have backs that are more like Helgen's here, where it's their name, their type, which he has as well, but then they have these checkerboard patterns with some sort of symbol that goes with them. So if we look at another character like Cormac has death symbols. So everyone usually has that checkerboard pattern, except for Ozrik, Ozrik, probably Ozrik. He has a fire, air, and elemental background, which is really different. I just thought that was kind of neat. It doesn't mean anything for gameplay or anything like that. It was just a little bit different. The other thing that makes his deck very different is the basic cards that he starts with. So everyone starts with these cards. Like I'm gambling, I'm in. Start a round of gambling or take control a round of gambling. Normally everyone has typically 5 or 6 of these. I mean, some characters have a little bit more or less. he has 1, which is very, very different. And then Winning Hand, which just will have an E for element Earth, which also is kind of an earthy background. Just kind of fun. Just has a symbol, but then the colors also help, plus the dots. So it's also kind of neat. He has like blank colored dots, but then they change color depending on what element you are. It says Winning Hand takes control around of a gambling. The next card to take control must be a cheating card. So normally everyone has 2 of these. He has 1. Same thing with I Raise. He gets 1 copy of this instead of the 2 that everybody else has. So that's just interesting that he gets less cards of these. This one has a water element. It says take control a round of gambling. Each player, including you, must ante again. He has Tip the Wench. Pick a player. They pay 1 gold to the inn. The wench thinks you should stop playing with the drinks. Negate is sometimes a card that changes the effects of a drink. This includes the negate, ignore, split drinks, pass drinks, or alter drink effects. It can only be affected by I don't think so. He's got the usually standard 2 copies of Wench, bring some drinks for my friend. You may play this card during your order a drink phase of your turn. Pay 1 gold to the inn, order 2 additional drinks. And then he has this I don't think so card. Negate a sometimes card. This card can only be affected by another I don't think so. So those are your basic cards, but yeah, he has just odd he has so few of the other ones. Alright, so we're going to look at some of his cards. So he has Want Some Elemental Ale. Pick another player, they gain 2 alcohol content. So now if you discard a fire and water card, they can also gain 3 alcohol content instead, or I should say or you can discard 2 earth elementals and they also pay you 1 gold. Now you can activate both of these abilities. You can discard 4 cards to make them lose 3 alcohol content and pay you 1 gold. But then they can go ahead and negate or interact with that. Which is also a very interesting thing to think about, because you might have a card that that normally might just say, hey, negate this or stop this or do something if it affects your alcohol content. And then they can block it either way. But they might have something that also says, when they have a different card that says, negate a card if it affects their gold. Well, if you don't pay the gold costs, they can't do that. But now if you've added that gold, now it gives them another thing that they can try and negate or block. So there's kind of that extra risk. Adding more effects or adding extra things can give them more things they can try and get rid of. Don't bother me when I'm attuning to the elements. Ignore a drink. Here's a fire one. Ugh, this drink is terrible. I'm sending it back. Ignore a drink. I'm just saying your armor isn't very effective against fire. Well, they set someone on fire. Pick another player, they lose 3 fortitude. I'm going outside for some exposure to the elements. You may play this card when you must ante. Instead of anteing, you leave the round of gambling, or ignore a drink. Gambling, don't waste my time. Negating action card that would start a round of gambling. The player that played that card may play another action card. Playing Earth, that player also pays you 1 gold. He's got 2 copies, they're both the same. Don't bother me with your silly games. You may play this card when you must ante. Instead of anteing, you may leave a round of gambling. So this guy really doesn't like to do the gambling. Ice Storm, I was just trying to cool off my drink. Each other player loses 1 fortitude. 1 water. Each other player loses an additional 1 fortitude. Water and any element. Each other player loses an additional fortitude, and then another water, another element. Each player loses another. So now if you played 3 water and 2 other things for a total of 5, you basically make someone lose 4 fortitude this way. So it's kind of a fun thing to play around with. And there's more where that came from. Pick 2 other players. Put a card from the Drink Me deck into each of their Drink Me piles. Any element, pick 3 players, up to 3 players instead. And then water, put 2 cards from the Drink Me deck into each other drink me piles instead. So that's kind of a neat one because it's a different replacement effect for either one. So either you can replace the number of players, or you can replace the number of drinks, or do both. He's got Turn to Stone, ignore an action, sometimes or anytime card that affects your fortitude, alcohol content, or gold. You may not use this to ignore a round of gambling. Elemental Destruction. Each other player pays 1 gold to the inn, or reveal and discard the top card of your drink me pile without taking its effect. To one such as me, drinks are just elements in a mug. You may play this after any player reveals a drink with possible chasers. Instead of its usual effect, the drink has gain 3 alcohol content. Any non-drink cards that change the drink still affect it normally. If you play water, it says it also has gain 1 alcohol content instead. You can basically water it down. That's kind of neat, so you can actually change it. So this could be any player. So if you're playing against somebody else, you might want to let it be that 3. If it's getting played against you, you could play the 1 water and water it down. Or you could play fire, water, and any element to change it to 5. So it's kind of neat depending on who you want to play it against. 2 copies of Are You Questioning My Powers? Pick another player, they lose 1 fortitude. Fire, they lose 1 additional fortitude. And water, they lose 1 additional fortitude. 2 copies of Allow Me to Add a Little Fire to That. Add alcohol content to a drink, and then either the fire and water either add 1 alcohol or 1 additional alcohol, so either one. 2 copies of Elementary Knowledge. Pay 1 gold to the inn, draw 2 cards from your character deck. Water, draw 3 cards instead. Or earth and any element, pay 0 gold. 2 copies of Recharging the Elements. Gain 1 fortitude. You also lose 1 alcohol content. 2 copies of Oh Please, Your Powers Are No Match for Mine. Ignore an action, sometimes or anytime card that affects your fortitude. 2 copies of Gold. I have a spell for that. You may play this card when you're about to lose gold. Use gold from the inn rather than your own stash. Playing Earth, you also gain 1 gold from the inn. The Raw Elemental Boost. Before you play this card during your turn, for your discard or draw phase, your hand size is increased by 1. If you play a fire, it's increased by 2 instead. Which for his deck, having an increased hand size is could be really important. It gives you a lot more stuff. What's that up your sleeve? Take control a round of gambling. Pick another player and force them to leave the round. I like that he doesn't have any really gambling cards, and he actually tries to stop a lot of the gambling, yet he still has this card that just, hey, if I have to gamble, I'm going to win. So that's kind of funny to me. 2 copies of Don't Trifle with This Mage. You may play this card immediately after you lose fortitude from a card played by another player. You may not play this card if you reduce that fortitude loss. That player loses 2 fortitude. Earth, they lose 3 instead, and water, you gain 1. 2 copies of Trust Me, this will focus your elemental essence. Pick another player, they lose 2 fortitude. And then finally, he says, I only gamble if it's a sure thing. Start a round of gambling, your ante comes from the inn. Or, take control round of gambling, you may play this card even if the last card to take control was winning. So that's funny, there's another one like that. If he's gonna gamble, he's gonna basically win. So yeah, this is actually a really fun looking deck. In character, because you get a lot of options. You play this, there's lots of the basic stuff everything else does, but then you get lots of options. I can up it a little bit, I can up it a lot, or you can, I love that there's some of the cards that are the options. So either I can add 1 number or I can reduce a different number. I love cards like that. I love anything that gives me different options of doing stuff. Yes, if you're looking for maybe a little bit more complex character, which these solo decks are, this is definitely a character to pick up. He's got some fun, interesting stuff. Or if you don't really like gambling, this might be a little bit better character for you since he doesn't really want to do that. He just tries to get over there as quickly as possible. Or at least he doesn't initiate it. Alright, there you go. See you guys in the next video. Bye.